ranking or comparative index for each MAR scenario. So this, for example, these are three different scenarios of MAR and how they, what is the sustainability of these, both looking at the local aquifer, MAR at the local site, but also what is the impact of MAR on the water supply for eastern Botswana. So the conclusions from the project is that the water supply security model, it's a tool that provides a decision support for more efficient and sustainable use of water resources. It is a practical tool for evaluating a wide variety of scenarios and measures. And by connecting managed aquifer recharge well fields, we will improve the water supply security of Gaborone with about 10%. And MAR also provides a more long-term sustainable use of the Pala Road aquifer due to less depletion of storage over time. One issue to look at is that the increased demand for water in the whole system reduces the potential of MAR, since time for injection is limited. Therefore, also other measures like water-saving measures, etc., is also needed in combination with MAR to secure the long-term water supply for Botswana. And the sustainability analysis of MAR alternatives using this multi-criteria analysis shows that the tool provides a structured comparison of MAR relative to non-MAR operations. And it also shows that MAR provides a more sustainable operation due to improved water supply security, resource utilization, and consumer well-being. Thank you very much for your attention.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jonathan, for that excellent presentation, and the case study from Botswana. So we'll just move on quickly to our next presenter. Our next presenter is going to be Mr. Emmanuel Kisendi, who will be presenting to us on groundwater resources evaluation in the Central Kalahari Karoo Basin. Emmanuel, if you can hear me, you can start your presentation. Please, is the presenter ready? Okay. I encourage all the participants to, the presenters to stay online so that they can respond to the questions. Yes, I see Emmanuel is ready. Please, you can go ahead with your presentation. Thanks.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, hi everybody. My name's Emmanuel Ezekiel Kisendi. I come from Tanzania and I work for the Ministry of Water, the principal hydrogeologist. I bring to you a scientific story which was written back in like 5 years back in the Kalahari-Karoo Basin, which is in Botswana. And just to follow up on the two presenters which have just finished on the modeling part, I will just introduce you on the basics on how to go through till you decide to make a numerical model. Next please. Now, we all know that, next please, we all know that groundwater is widespread and very important, especially in the areas which are dry, like Botswana, where surface waters are limited. There is much dependence on the groundwater resources. Now, when we were trying to write the story on this, we found out, despite the fact that this country depends much on groundwater, but still a lot had not been known, especially on the heterogeneity and heterogeneity of the aquifers in the area. And therefore, we intended to develop the hydrostratigraphy model of the area so as to find out what exactly are the main aquifers in the area. So in order for us to do groundwater evaluation, of course, again, models can be used. But now the objective here was actually to evaluate the groundwater recharge and the groundwater resources in the Lokalane-Kojane Basin. At first, we started by trying to understand the hydrostratigraphy model of the big area, which is the Kalahari-Karoo Basin. Then we narrowed down to just a small part of the Kalahari-Karoo Basin, which is the Lokalane-Kojane Basin, so as to develop some sort of a model and see the flow regime in the area and how they work. So that is our study area. You see the red boundary is the big area, which is the Kalahari-Karoo Basin, and the blue one is the Lokalane-Kojane, which is just a small part of the Kalahari-Karoo Basin. And as you see, the Kalahari-Karoo Basin is that big, while the Lokalane-Kojane is just 47 kilometers square. That is the landscape of the area. We acquired a lot of monitoring boreholes in the area, as you can see. But now, despite drilling such a number of boreholes, still the country couldn't understand actually the hydrostratigraphy of that area. So our task was to let the community understand what actually is the stratigraphy model and which part of the geology is the main aquifer in the area. So at first, we took all those boreholes and started logging. We logged for lithology, and after logging, next please, next. So we used the LocalX model to do the stratigraphy model. After we came up with the stratigraphy model, then we started to develop like a groundwater flow model using those the stratigraphy models which we obtained in part 1. So our methodology were, as you can see on the left-hand side, the first one was to develop the stratigraphy model. After we obtained the stratigraphy model, then on the right one, we developed a simple numerical model which was aiming at understanding the flow characteristics of the area. Next. Next, please. Now, by using the Rockworks, which is a very simple software to apply, having re-rocked all the boreholes which were found in the area, then we plotted them and found just to see how spatially do they plot in the big picture of the Kalahari-Karoo Basin. Then using the Rockworks software, we were able to come up with the stratigraphy of the area. As you can see, we came up with the 5 layers in which the basement was the pre-Karoo geology, followed by the Eka sandstone, and then we had the mudstone in between it, and the basalt. And on top, we had the Kalahari sand. Next, please. After we had this stratigraphy model, now we tried to see what exactly in this area is the main aquifer. We condensed the stratigraphy model into the hydrostratigraphy model, and then we came up with, again, 5 layers, but now the aim here was to assess every layer, how much does it contribute to the flow regime in the area. So we found that the pre-Karoo remained as a basement. The Eka sandstone was found to be one of the main aquifers, and the Ntane and Eka sandstones are the ones which were found to be the main aquifers in the area. But the mudstone and the stoneback basalt were just aquifers. There were no flows observed in those geological, lithological zones. Next, please. Now, after we understood the stratigraphy model of the area, now what next? We thought that in order to prove what we thought was right, we started constructing a numerical model, in this case using the stratigraphy model which we obtained in part 1, and that is now the Lokalane Basin, which is just a small part of the Kalahari Basin. And on the right-hand side, as you can see, is the conceptual model. We thought that the top layer, which is Kalahari sand, is being underlaid by the aquitard, which is the Stoback basalt, and under it was the Ntane sandstone, which was the main aquifer, and then a mudstone, which was an aquitard, and an Eka sandstone, which is also the main aquifer. Under it is the basement, which is the pre-Karoo. We also came up with different boundary conditions, which I'm not going to talk about them because one of the presenters talked about them a lot. Next. Next, please. Now, after we conceptualized now, what next? We came up with the just a steady state model, simple one, to test and see in which aquifer or in which lithology in the area is actually contributing much water in the area. As you can see on the top left, on the right-hand side, in the top, that was the hydraulic heads of the Ntane sandstone, which was one of the main aquifer in the area. And downward is the Eka, which was also one of the main aquifers in the area. We did calibrate our model, and we came up with a root mean square error of 0.56, and our calibration parameters were the hydraulic conductivity, the horizontal one, and vertical ones. Also, because we had 2 aquitards, which were like confining layers, we also included them in the model, which were mudstone and the Stoback basalt. Next, please. Yes, we did a simple water budget, just like any other modeling approach, and we came up with the total inflow to the model being 194.10 millimeter per year, but 99% of the inflow was coming from the unsaturated zone, and 0.1% was coming from the inflows, the lateral ones. Again, 99% of the outflow in the area was due to evapotranspiration, given the fact that this area its temperature is very high and the land is exposed, so evaporation is actually very high. And only 0.1% of the outflows were through the lateral losses. That was just a diagram to show the water budget, which is actually presented in the table above. Next. Now, what do we learn? Actually, we want to do this work in Tanzania, where most of the people in the country depend on groundwater, but still the country has a limited knowledge on the science of groundwater. So we are trying to do the same work in the Lake Victoria Basin area, and we think come next year our work can be ready for management purpose. So at last we had our three-dimensional hydrostratigraphic model of the whole Kalahari Basin, and also in the Lokalane and Kojane Basin, we could well conceptualize the model, and we came up with the net recharge of the Lokalane and Kojane Basin as only 0.03 millimeter per year, which is very low. But we understand that groundwater knowledge should be emphasized in countries with limited surface waters like Botswana and other countries of the like. And being widespread, we have a thinking that groundwater has a great role in the sustainable development of our countries. Now, this was just the beginning of the study. We think maybe some other studies took over to make this one to a complete set of a study. But if not, we think the transient model to quantify aquifer storage, specific yields, should be done on the area so as to come up with the really science of the groundwater in the area. And also the aspect of borehole abstraction in our model couldn't be put in, which is like a limitation. So if this work is taken further, then the abstraction aspect in the model should be taken on board so as to get an informative water balance. Having said so, I thank you very much for your kind attention. Asanteni sana.
Great. Thank you much, Emmanuel, for that presentation. We will move to the next presenter.
Charlie.
I don't know whether Mr. Jaffet.
No, Charlie, actually.
Oh, sorry. Idao Charlotte Ngoli, please. Thanks.
Good afternoon to you all. My name is Charlotte Idao. I am a Transboundary Water Resources Officer working with the Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation from Kenya. I am doing a review of the status of cooperation in the IGAD region. Groundwater is considered one of the driving forces towards achieving the global sustainable development goals due to its untapped potential. The diminishing quantity of surface water due to the variability in climate and quality due to high anthropogenic contamination levels has led to a gradual shift to the utilization of groundwater in both rural and urban areas. In our IGAD region, we note that transboundary aquifer management has not been successful, or is not there actually, due to since there are no legal frameworks, policies, and agreements in place. In our IGAD region, we note that we lack up-to-date spatial and temporal information on groundwater recharge and potential, and decline in groundwater quality as a result of domestic waste, industrial effluents, and the widespread fertilizer usage for agricultural purposes on shallow aquifers calls for proper management of groundwater utilization against of exploitation, especially in areas threatened by contamination. My objective of this review is to strengthen knowledge systems in support of sustainable development and management of groundwater resources towards an improvement on cooperation and collaboration among the IGAD member countries with the aim of achieving improved food and water security while avoiding related conflicts and ensuring attainment of peace. I have used literature review on transboundary aquifer management in Africa, basing on examples from SADC case studies of the Strumpet transboundary aquifer and Ramotswa on groundwater quality monitoring. I've actually used SADC deliberately because they are our neighbors and they are Africans like us, meaning that since they have been able to cooperate in management of their aquifers, then it is also possible in our region to cooperate. I have noted that there's a gap feasibility studies and groundwater researches conducted on IGAD transboundary aquifers. For example, Mount Elgon, Melty, and Daua still poses a prominent challenge of lack of adequate data and information on groundwater recharge and potential. So using SADC examples from Strumpet transboundary aquifer, we see that this aquifer was faced by high nitrate contamination, and therefore what they did is they cooperated as the sharing states in actually identifying the sources of this contamination. They did joint studies and did groundwater monitoring in cooperation together to actually manage the aquifer. When we go to Ramotswa, we see that Ramotswa also faced nitrate contamination. It is a shallow aquifer, a dolomite aquifer, and due to its location, a rural setting location, it is actually in a rural setting, and therefore there are a lot of pit latrines that are used, and due to the geological formation of that aquifer, there was a lot of contamination from the waste from pit latrines, and therefore cooperation between Botswana and South Africa actually enabled management of the aquifer. We see that groundwater areas impacted or going to be impacted upon by anthropogenic activities were identified, and strict observation of groundwater protection zones and elimination of pollution problems for the renewed future use of the most important Botswana's aquifer were made possible through cooperation. Focus on programs for land use planning and monitoring of vulnerable areas of the Ramotswa aquifer helped planners address the looming crisis of water management in Botswana. This is a map. This is not my work. It is from literature review. This is a map of Africa which shows areas with high risk of contamination with nitrates. And when we see at our IGAD area, the Horn of Africa, we see that the red The red color indicates very high areas with risk to contamination, which we find in our IGAD area. And therefore, this means that we need to cooperate in monitoring our groundwaters, the transboundary aquifers, that is. We see that the ongoing geochemical investigations on the Mount Elgon transboundary aquifer revealed that the aquifer's groundwater quality is under threat by both geologic and anthropogenic factors due to the low permeability and rock-water interactions in the metamorphic rock terrains, alongside the extensive use of fertilizers and destruction of the catchment area. Conservation of Mount Elgon catchment and ensuring sustainable practices towards the management of the aquifer can be possible through cooperation. In the Genaledawa Basin, shared between Kenya, Somalia, and Ethiopia, groundwater recharge significantly occurs at the northern highs of the basin and gets discharged at the transboundary areas. Joint detailed studies in determining groundwater potential and characterization of the groundwater flow systems in the basin are required, as well as groundwater quality monitoring at the transboundary discharge zones due to the risk of groundwater pollution through anthropogenic activities from the upland irrigable areas. This is also not my work, this is from literature. And this is Genaledawa Basin. This is a model which was used to identify major recharging and discharging sites. I don't know whether you are able to see the red circles and the green ones. Red circles appear at the highlands, and the green appear along the lower border. This is the bottom line is the border between Kenya and Ethiopia, and we see that groundwater flows from the highlands towards the lowlands, towards the transboundary area. And therefore, if agricultural activities happen from the upland side, then definitely if you're not going to manage the aquifer properly, then we will have contamination of our groundwaters at the discharging zones, which are at the transboundary area. So I suggest a way forward to ensure availability of groundwater data and enable the sharing and dissemination of information. A long-term groundwater monitoring plan is suggested. One, we need to develop groundwater quality monitoring program, then do mapping and modeling of groundwater quality, then do groundwater quality data and information management as we look for finances to enable sustainable monitoring activities. So under the monitoring strategy, first there is need of preliminary assessment of groundwater situation, assess conflicts and trends towards sustainable monitoring, and then carry out groundwater system analysis and development of conceptual models, followed by the analysis of institutional settings. And if the program is implementable and the financial strength is there, then we are able to implement the monitoring program. After development of the monitoring program, then we do the keeping in mind that is under development of a monitoring program, we should keep in mind the water quality assessment cycle, whereby for us to manage water properly, then we need to assess the information needs that we have. At this moment, for instance, we've identified that there is a gap in we do not have enough data to enable us to come up with informed decisions. And therefore, we need to have a way to have data for us to have informed decisions. And therefore, we need to assess our information needs and then develop a monitoring strategy. Actually, this slide was skipped. So under the monitoring strategy is what I had explained earlier. So, and then after developing a monitoring strategy, then we design a network, collect samples, do laboratory analysis, handle the data, analyze the data, then do reporting, and then utilize the information, and the information that we get from the monitoring, then we feed it back to the water management, and the cycle continues. So under the management of data and information, you should keep in mind that, so we need to have data, which we do not have. The feasibility studies that have already been done are not enough for us to be able to make improved, informed decisions. And therefore, we need to have detailed studies on our transboundary aquifers for us to have, to be able to manage them properly. And therefore, we need to create data. And by creating data, I mean we need to have to capture data, store data, and then process it. And after processing it, then we analyze the data, preserve the data, and then we give access to data. That is, it will enable us to share the data information that we have among the sharing states, because we'll have done joint studies together. And therefore, we are able, from that, we'll be able to reuse the data for proper management. In conclusion, I conclude that there is need for cooperation among IGAD member states in carrying out joint detailed studies in characterization of transboundary aquifers towards an understanding of the actual groundwater potential in the shared aquifers and groundwater flow patterns that will enable sustainable management. Envisaged benefits of cooperation include increased economic growth of each sharing state as a result of improved water supply and sanitation and improved water resources management, which greatly contributes to poverty eradication. We also have another benefit. Cooperation will enable creation of awareness concerning groundwater resources among the sharing states as a result of flow of information across borders about transboundary aquifers. It will also improve regional peace and security as a result of curbing any potential water-related conflicts. And it will also improve regional integration through identification and development of joint investments. It will also there will be ease of resource mobilization as a multi-country voice for implementation of transboundary projects as compared to unilateral efforts. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Charlotte, for the presentation. Thank you. So just to be sure that we don't have Japhet with us, do we have him to make his presentation? I see that he was supposed to participate virtually, but I don't see him online. So maybe we can just proceed to Q&A session. I just read few from the chats. So there's a question for Patrick Murunga. Somebody is asking, these models that are coming out, what causes decrease in most boreholes, more especially artesian wells at time of drilling? The site has good production, but as years goes on, you find there is a very big significant decline in the production. So just basically on the water levels in the boreholes, why do we have some kind of decline in the quantity of water in these boreholes? You know, how does your model help address this knowledge gap? So this is a question for Patrick. There's also another question. I think it goes to all the presenters. Somebody wants to know the presenter's perspective on the role of regional structures in influencing groundwater movement in the IGAD countries, and how is the eastern arm of the Rift Valley system that stretches from afar influence the system in the region. I've just been told that Japhet is online, so maybe we just take his presentation quickly, and then we'll proceed to the Q&A session. So Japhet, can you just present quickly for us? Thank you. Japhet, I want to request that the host give him access so that he can make his presentation. Okay, Japhet is not responding. We saw him online, but he's not responding. So maybe Patrick, you can respond to the question, and then afterwards I will ask the rest to also address some of the questions. So Patrick.
Yes.
Can you just briefly explain how the model can help us understand the dynamics in the water levels in boreholes? Because I think we have a very typical example somewhere in the Maasai land in Kenya, where we made some boreholes. The volume of the water was very high, but at some point there was a very drastic decline, almost to a zero level. Can you help us how this model can help address this knowledge gap? Thanks.
Thank you so much. First, thank you so much for the question. The question is about dwindling yield from some of our wells, especially artesian wells. So beginning with the normal wells, if you realize that over a long period of time, your well is reducing in terms of its yield, then perhaps the construction method that was utilized was not very professional. Maybe a number of things were not considered, like the annular space, the gravel pack, and all that matter. But with time, the aquifer becomes clogged and water cannot flow through very well. But for artesian wells, there are a number of other factors besides just construction. This could be also related to seasonal fluctuations in for instance, climate change and all these other things. Now, models are important because they can help us predict this thing before it comes. For instance, if normal season, you have a certain amount of rainfall, but with time that rainfall pattern is reducing, then you can be able to project a certain scenario. So models are very powerful in terms of using them to infer, not just the future, predict the future, but also infer what happened in the past. So in the event like right now, we are thinking about climate change and what's happened. How is it? Is it too much rainfall? Too much rainfall? Too little rainfall? What's happening to our recharge zones? There's a lot of construction and what we call as land use, land cover changes in the recharge zone. That not so much water will get into the underground. Therefore, we can say and change the input parameters and say that input or rainfall or evaporation has increased, and therefore you can use the model to predict. However, you cannot use the model to stop these things because they are natural events. I don't know if my answer is sufficient.
Yeah, I think this is very clear. So I can also invite some of the presenters to respond to this. I think the person who is asking this question wants the perspective of all the presenters. He wants you to be able to give your perspective on the role of regional structures in influencing groundwater movement in the IGAD countries. And how is the eastern arm of the Rift Valley system that stretches from Afar influence the transboundary aquifer system in the region? So would you be able to share your perspective on the role of regional structures in influencing groundwater movement in the IGAD countries? I don't know who wants to first attempt this.
Yeah, Samuel Apate, I would like to adjourn this session, and thank you very much. I hope you don't mind, considering that we are just after the timetable time that is given for lunch, and we may end up colliding with the session for the afternoon session. But I would like to thank all of us who have attended this session, both physically and also online. And I also thank the keynote speaker, Abu Amani, and your chairmanship, Samuel Pate. We've had very strong presentations from various presenters. We've heard from Emmanuel Kisendi on the groundwater resources evaluation in Central Kalahari and Kalu Basin. You have also heard the keynote Abu Amani, who has given us a comprehensive breakdown of the major priority areas of UNESCO involvement, including the science and information on water, knowledge gap filling through data collection, water education, and integration, and also water governance. And these are key ingredients going forward to make sure that we have a very informative knowledge base, and the mechanisms for sharing. I think these are some of the instruments that we had the very strong presentation by the executive secretary of the IGAD. And we hope we can pursue these moving forward. Now we've also had quite a number of technical presentations by Patrick and also Emmanuel on the modeling and the emphasis that modeling requires very accurate information and data. Now, something that was mentioned earlier is that data collection is a continuous process, and it has to be done correctly. Now, for this session, I would like to adjourn and thank all of you, and with a clap, we close the session. Thank you very much. Now, the afternoon sessions will be back here at 2 o'clock. So unless somebody has a different view, I think 2 o'clock, chairman, with your permission, will be okay for all of us. Thank you very much.
Allez.
Check.
Allez. Check.
It meets a large proportion of demand. Any connecting? Can we check? Let's check and make sure that we are all off. Okay. I think we are okay. So as these resources continue to support socio-economic development of our region, we have already noted that very little is known about these resources in terms of their distribution, their availability, human and climate impacts, and also their quality. We therefore need to invest in knowing the resource, and understanding the resource, and also assess how the resource can help us in the region to improve our welfare, especially in the view of climate change. We have already noted that we are in a region prone to drought, and groundwater becomes the key resource in helping us to deal with these challenges. We cannot continue doing business as usual. We have to innovate. And that's why in this session we are talking about innovation in financing, and innovation in technology. How do we improve the way we are monitoring the resource, for example, in view of limited financial resources? How do we communicate groundwater information to the general public and those who are not experts? How do we assess the resource? What are the technological developments that exist in that regard? What about capacity building? We recognize we need to build the capacity. So the need for innovations, technology, say for groundwater assessment, for groundwater monitoring, regulation, and so forth, cannot be overemphasized. But we also need money. Again, we have said that whatever we are talking about needs money. We know financial resources are limited from our countries. How do we innovate? What are the innovative
we have a very exciting team today for this session. We don't have much time, so I will go straight ahead and invite our first speaker of today. I have not seen if Yongxing Su is online, but can I call Yongxing Su out, please?
Karen, we don't see him online, so you can continue.
Thank you very much, Caliste. We have, luckily, we have two keynote speakers today to cover the topic. And our next speaker is Irene Guy. She is a very keen worker within the wash sector, and she's currently with Oxfam. I hope, Irene, you are there, and feel free to further introduce yourself. Over to you, Irene.
Thank you so much, Karen. I hope you can all hear me very well. I'm really happy to be part of this engagement and discussion, because then water is at the heart of everything that we do. So I will be happy to give my keynote address. My name is Irene Guy. I work for Oxfam Supporting Kenya program as the water sanitation and hygiene strategist that deals with work mostly in arid and semi-arid lands where climate change has really impacted livelihoods, including around water access. So I have a quick PowerPoint to guide me through my keynote address, and I'll quickly share the screen, my screen with you, if that is all right. Okay, so are we all able to see it?
Yes, it's fine, Irene, if you could put it in presentation mode.
Okay. Right there then. Okay, so I'll start with a story of Lopia Community Village in Kenya. It could be any village in Africa, could be in Uganda, Somalia, Zambia, or even South Africa. For Lopi Village, one of the challenges that we have been having are issues related to inadequate government investment and poor services, such that even basic needs like getting water is a daily challenge for many women and girls as well. So this is a story of many dry lands in Kenya where water is rare and extraordinary efforts really goes into getting it. In fact, in this village, one of the aid worker was even saying that it's all about part lives, because not everyone dies, but it wreaks havoc with the lives of those who survive and take the joy out of living for those who have to even bury their own because of lack of water. And for some of those community, like a lady called Jabi, they say that to get water in that place, it's like digging for gold, months of excavation before you can actually strike rich. So for most communities in Africa, Kenya included, the challenge is when water systems break and taps run dry, particularly when you're talking about groundwater access. So when this happens, as you can see in this photo, then life without that safe water becomes really compounded for communities, especially for women and girls that have to trek for long distances to access this precious resource, but also have to dig through even hard ground just to get access from dry riverbeds. So this is the daily reality for many people in Africa, and it's worse off. For the past decade, we've seen more of this situation given the unprecedented frequency and also density of major emergency responses related to climate change, particularly where we are having drought phenomena. So for WASH sector, this situation has just increased in the scale, geographical scope, issues around capacity even to be able to respond to this kind of emergencies, and funding requirements to be able to meet the needs and expectations of the affected populations. So in essence, what this is implying is that the Sustainable Development Goal number 6 target around having at least by 2030 every person having access to safe water and sanitation services is becoming more compounded when we have access only being to a segment of populations because of the dynamics around the geographical areas that they live in. So then when you talk about scarcity and equity in Africa, Kenya included, then some of the causes that we have seen as an agency as Oxfam are related to issues around overuse of water, where you find that abstraction is done in a way that is not sustainable. And this is because most people do not employ technologies that can regulate abstraction of water points. But apart from technology, then we're talking about issues around enforcement of policies, even around abstraction levels. Then, of course, we have issues around pollution of water, where you have many industries also polluting some of the water sources that we have, but also we have human actions, even including around open defecation in catchment areas, basically negating the kind of quality of water source, particularly for downstream uses. Then climate change has really compounded issues around scarcity. We've seen a lot of boreholes drying up, even in areas that we established the groundwater table to be high due to climate change. We've seen a lot of variation, particularly with sustainability of some of the water sources. Of course, conflict has affected equity a lot, particularly in some of the regions that we work, where we see displacements affecting people in terms of water sources. But of course, also conflict related to specific water points where you have pastoralists coming on board. They want to access water also for their animals in a community that is relatively sedentary. Then you realize that they have struggles, particularly around how to balance between access by the local communities and also access by animals. Then we've seen issues related to distance, where most communities live far away from sources that have been developed. So they have to walk for long distances even to access water from natural sources like river, and drought by itself has compounded also access to water for many households. So then in our assessment and based on our experience, then what it takes to deliver a water service should not just be about interventions that are basically looking at infrastructure investments only for water and sanitation. Sanitation in the sense of improving water quality, because this by themselves, you've seen them fail over time. And if we don't address also issues around investments around maintenance to sustain services in the long term, then not much progress will be realized. We've also come to appreciate that it's not just about pipes, bolts, and bricks, which goes into infrastructure, but then a better understanding around the people, the rules, and the frameworks needed to deliver these services is an integral part of ensuring sustainable service delivery. So some of these, the bits about the rules, the frameworks, and the people are some of the foundational systemic issues which we've realized are core in achieving sustainable service delivery, but also having more impact around groundwater solutions management. Because when we don't address the foundational systemic issues, then any investment, even related to water supply systems, will be short-term, and effectively they'll be promoting dependence on external support rather than building what you're looking out for in terms of self-sufficiency. So of course then when we have self-sufficiency even with local governments and also with local communities, then we are talking about resilience building around the kind of infrastructure that would be there, but also in terms of capacity by the local community and the local governments to be able to respond even in terms of emergency. So then when you're talking about the service delivery, particularly for WASH and in relation to water services, we appreciate that the delivery of this takes many different functions. We have policy and regulation where the government comes in. We also have financing, which is core, because you can't move much, you can't move the needle without the resources that should be accompanying that. But then we appreciate that as we are in the era of technology, again, learning and adaptation is very key. We can't keep doing the same thing over and over and expect a different result. So learning on what some of the best practices and trying to adapt this to the different contexts is something that we've seen that can respond to some of the needs even at scale. And then of course service provision, in ensuring that you don't just talk about, for example, in the context of groundwater provision, you don't just talk about the management, but you also understand better how to enable that groundwater as a resource to be able to reach people in terms of service. So some of the insights that we have through the work that we've done as Oxfam on what matters. Again, this is related to things related to innovations, but also related to some of the programs that different agencies are undertaking, or related to even some of the priorities that development partners have in terms of the kind of options that they would want to support or finance. So we've seen that solutions that step things up have really done well. Because at the end of the day, it's about impact on the ground, particularly if you're talking about the expanded scope of WASH sector in view of some of the evolving risk of climate change adaptation, issues around water scarcity and water stress levels, and of course also related to environmental contamination. And then of course at the heart of the Sustainable Development Goal number 6, models that are leapfrog opportunities, particularly in hard-to-reach areas where investments are hard to come by, like in the arid and semi-arid lands, are models that should be encouraged more. So you're talking about looking at ways to have innovative enterprise growth, because through our engagement, even as Oxfam, I'll give an example. We have been in the arid and semi-arid lands for now more than 60 years in Kenya. We've realized that doing business as usual, where you put funds for the sake of funds, does not work. But when you involve enterprises, then you're able to address some of the challenges that are emerging. Then, of course, when you're talking about enterprise engagement, you're looking at also innovations that would strengthen the WASH actors' capacity and accountability in service delivery. I'll talk about this in my next slides, particularly if we're talking about resilient systems that would sustain communities over time. So then, in this regard, then we are talking about investments that have to work on the local level first, and then looking at how best to scale this and replicate this kind of propositions in similar contexts. Then, in a way, we are saying that we should be promoting more business models, which should be at the core of emerging partnerships. Whether we are talking about public-private sector partnerships, we should be looking at this kind of business models and putting the entrepreneurs at the center of these models. So essentially, we are saying that it is important that moving forward, we should look at ways in which engagements would be more around business models and moving away from funds for funding sake, like the grants that we invest in communities, but without adequate support or linkage with the local markets to sustain those over time. So then, of course, we also underscore the importance of human capital, which is one of the most ignored expenditures in WASH service delivery. So when you're talking about human capital, you're talking about bringing capital and maintenance expenditure becoming part of the language that we have, even as you're talking about groundwater solutions that can be resilient over time. So some of the emerging practices that we are profiling and which we've seen as practices that are pushing the needle around some of the hard-to-reach contexts. I'll talk about one of the work we are doing in Kenya, in one of the arid and semi-arid counties, that is called Turkana. So we have a performance-based service level contract agreement where we're engaging a private sector operator to provide the ongoing operation and maintenance for rural water systems, which essentially are predominantly boreholes. So through this model, we want to demonstrate that the public sector investment in operation and maintenance, if you add that with service delivery through the specialized support from the private sector, would be a more cost-effective way to deliver reliable and sustainable water services than what most countries are having, where you're talking about community-run management models. So basically, we are trying to change how operation and maintenance of rural water supply systems are organized, managed, and paid for. But then in terms of payment, we are trying to activate not just tariffs that is collected at the local level to pay for the local staff, but then also see how to engage with the regulatory changes in order to introduce what you're calling levies that would be able to support also operation and maintenance of infrastructure that is being invested in. So through this model, we are aggregating existing water service providers in these hard-to-reach areas, and then putting them under single operation and maintenance contract with clear key performance inputs that the private sector operator needs to respond to. So in terms of accountability, we have enforced mechanisms within that contract to ensure that the turnaround time, even for the private sector operator, is within some set standards, so that they are also accountable in terms of this contract and ensure that water is available for the local communities that we are engaging in. And to manage this in terms of how that model is also having outlook in terms of impact, part of the work that has gone into that model is to ensure that there is proper asset registry, just so that we understand what needs to be done in terms of infrastructure maintenance, as well as the community engagement mechanism. So then we understand that what costs this would go into in terms of management of the same. Then of course that informs us in terms of what the investment needs are, looking at the current tariff that is available vis-a-vis what would enable these systems to break even. Then that informs the kind of investment planning we have, like what would be able to pay for the contract, what should be able to pay for the human resource at the local level, and also informing the county government in engaging with the local communities around tariff adjustments. But then again, also having discussions around ring fencing of the resources that are there, particularly around ensuring that the funds available would be able to sustain the model that is there. So that, again, through that process, it informs some of the decisions around the internal regulations mechanism that we need, the plans to sustain the systems, like currently we are having a 15-month plan, and then of course ensuring that there's high level of service given to these communities to inform evidence that this county would be able to take up and scale this across the board. So we've started with 60 schemes. The county has around 800 operational systems that they would need supported, and we are hoping that through this engagement, they would be able to scale this up and ensure that those systems are managed in a way that is sustainable. So of course, that is just one piece of the work. The operation and maintenance is one part of the puzzle. But then in the long run, we are looking at how best to support the county governments to be able to set up devolved financing or funding baskets that they would be able to pay for to ensure that water service delivery is more sustainable. So this would be informed by a result-based payments model, which we are currently working with the Turkana County government, and it's called the Outcomes Fund for Turkana, looking at water service delivery. So some of the issues that we address, even as we are designing this fund, we realize that the finance flows is so erratic. Everyone is putting their money where they feel they should put it, but without aligning incentives or objectives around a common goal. Then of course, issues around design has really impacted sustainable access of some of the resources. We've seen situations where water services is done, but without consideration for a pastoralist community, without a consideration for the animal trust, which is a key component in terms of access. Because where you don't provide, for example, animal trials in the design, you'd find community members who want the animals to access water, vandalizing the system. So because for them, that is also a key for the animals to access water. So then issues of design to ensure that the designs in place are quite robust, but also responsive to the given context is quite key in terms of some of the outcomes that you would align a basket fund like this. Then of course, critical for us is to ensure that the water supply systems are maintained if we are able to have this kind of resilience building. So what the current work we are doing on operation and maintenance, which is market-based and involving the private sector, is that through the data we are having around the financial engineering that you're currently doing on what works, what is needed, at what cost, we are able to inform the design of the outcomes fund, because this has been a missing link. Getting better insight on how much repairs cost or what the cost of new infrastructure costs and what needs to be financed is a gap that we have seen, particularly in some of these counties that are really have been struggling with accessing investment to improve service delivery. So linking with groundwater management solutions, I would just want to mention that even as you're talking about human resource, and back to my initial point about the scale and scope of needs by local communities expounding, particularly even you're talking about climate change, then we have to already start reflecting around technologies that would make life not just easy for these communities, but would improve efficiency in delivery of services even by agencies and by governments. So in all this, some of the best practices we've seen in the field and which we are also incorporating in our work includes remote monitoring. There are sensors that most agencies are currently embracing, but then we are saying that this should not just be something that is currently being piloted, but it should be some of the innovations that can already be scaled up because then we have realized that this is a key component in ensuring that the success of